Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Real Combat Media MMA Radio. I am your host. My name is Isaac Lanford. I'm coming to you from Indianapolis, Indiana. I am joined tonight by comedian DJ Dangler. DJ, how are you this evening?
Hi, I am terrific. Thanks so much.
Yeah, right on. We've got another big show tonight. We're going to be talking the results from over the weekend, World Series of Fighting Bellator and the UFC. We will be previewing Bellator and UFC cards, and we will also be speaking to Julia Budd and Leslie Smith, who will both be appearing on Invicta's card on December 7th. It's going to be a very fun evening. Before we get going, DJ, I want to ask you, I believe I just saw on your Facebook page that on Halloween night you were opening for Afro Man.
I am. I am opening up for the rapper Afro Man. If I could go back to myself and talk to myself my sophomore year in college and tell him what I would be doing this weekend, I would probably just sit on the couch and congratulate myself until right now. Yeah.
And where's the show going to be in case some listeners are in the area and they want to go see you and Afro Man?
It's in the Indianapolis area. I feel awful. I don't remember. It's one of those, Indianapolis is a town that just spreads for miles and miles and miles, and I think swallowed up pretty much every suburb in the Midwest. But it's one of those tiny little suburbs of it. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah,
Mooresville. I've never heard of Mooresville until just now, but
yeah,
sure, sounds like a good time. Afro Man will be there. You'll be there. Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Halloween night.
I'm so excited about it. It is. It's an embarrassing. Every now and then, my nephews get to think I'm cool, and that's really the only thing I want to do.
Hey, that's good. You and Afro Man, I have a feeling that you might be stoned for the show.
There's a possibility. I feel like if anybody hassles you for being stoned when you're working with Afro Man, they are wrong. Like, I think if even the cops came in, they'd be like, no, we're in the wrong.
Well, when you got to work security at the Afro Man show, I think you know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
We are going to be jumping into interviews pretty early on in the night tonight. Here in about another 10, 15 minutes, we're going to be getting Julia Budd in. So I'm going to try to see if we can squeeze in a little bit of recapping in this amount of time. Maybe we can get some MMA talk in here in the first 15 minutes. And I'm going to start with Friday night's Bellator 105, Awad versus Brooks 2, which we saw notably here, Mighty Mo getting a submission victory over Ron Sparks, which was kind of odd, and they looked equally surprised by it as me while watching it. Sparks went for a takedown immediately. Yeah, that is like the big man move, though, right? Yeah.
A key lock in MMA, I think, is kind of like a side headlock in wrestling. You're like, this is the move big guys have to learn.
Yeah. Well, it works both ways because it's simple, and if you're big, you can crank it, and also if you're big, your arm doesn't bend that way. So it works out pretty well for a big man submission. But Mo flipped him over on a takedown defense, and it was weird. Like, he was really hesitant with punches. He didn't know exactly what to do, but he got the submission. So way to go, Mighty Mo picking up 2 wins in 2 months here. Bigger resurgence back in the game. Then we saw Alexander Sarnovsky make it into the finals. He defeats Ricardo Trelawney by submission triangle choke. Very quick, a minute into the first round. He looked good, It was fast. You can't say a whole lot about a fight that goes that quickly, although we already know that Sarnovsky is a badass. And Will Brooks took out Saad Awad with unanimous decision in the lightweight fight. Pretty good fight, like, you know, not incredibly lopsided or anything, but it was clearly every round for Will Brooks. Decent night. So now we're going to see Will Brooks and Cernovsky are going to be in the final, and if this trend keeps up, we're going to see Mighty Mo fighting in the next 2 months in Bellator, picking up another win. But good for you, Bellator. Nice, solid little card. We'll be talking about the upcoming Bellator card that was supposed to be the pay-per-view that got the rug pulled out from under it with Tito's injury. But next, I want to move on to World Series of Fighting 6, Berkman versus Carl. Good night of fights and not a great night for UFC vets, which I don't really know. I try to look at this from both sides. When you're a UFC vet, or let's take it from World Series of Fighting's perspective, you've got all these UFC vets. They are notable names and faces, so you can market them. But is it, in your opinion, DJ, would you say, is it better to have those guys winning and building on that momentum, or having these guys that I don't know as well beating these guys and showing that they're on equal or greater ground? What do you think?
I think my position on this very much changed with their last two cards. At first, I thought it really would hurt them when Fitch came in and lost. Or I was like, oh man, well there it goes. But yeah, now that I see it happening more and more, I think it does kind of it takes away from the myth that the UFC is varsity MMA.
Sure.
You know,
and now go ahead.
I think everybody still understands that UFC does have the premier talent, but I think the World Series, I think Berkman losing, I think John Fitch not being dominant, it leaves a lot of credence to these smaller promotions, I think.
Yeah, and, you know, but then I just try to come at it from the other angle as well, and it's like, well, but these guys aren't in the UFC anymore, so does it show that these other guys are that good, or is it reaffirm that these guys weren't good enough to be in the UFC, now they're even losing to these guys?
It could definitely be played that way. I'm sure that's how it would be covered by Dana White. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think it's hard to tell. MMA is at a really weird crossroads where it needs to have a dominant. It does need to have a national organization if it really wants to overcome that issue. But I don't know if such a thing is possible.
Right. And I guess let's illustrate what we're talking about here about the wins and losses. Coming into this, we saw Jacob Volkman lose unanimous decision to lose Firmino, who he really wasn't given a whole lot of respect to when we talked to him in the other interviews that I saw, and it looks like it didn't pay off for him. Pablo Alfonso takes out Miguel Torres by submission guillotine choke in the first round, which there's some weirdness about this where Torres is saying that, I guess I actually did not get to see this particular fight, but he says he came out to the cage and that the referee made him go change his shorts that had already been cleared, so he said his head was thrown off for the fight. That's kind of strange. I don't really know. And Justin Gathje, or unless the J is silent, Gathje, took out Dan Lozon by TKO. John Fitch carried that former UFC flag to a split decision over Marcelo Alfaba in what was a pretty good, pretty even fight. Marlon Moraes kind of embarrassed Carson Beebe. Carson Beebe decided to take the kamikaze approach in the fight, and it didn't pay off for him. And Steve Carl takes out Josh Berkman via technical submission. I'm going to start with the triangle choke. I'm going to start with the main event here. Really good fight, really even between Steve Carl and Josh Berkman. And there were a couple things in the fight that I was taking note of. One, both guys were holding their hands incredibly low. Berkman's chin was really high, too, and that made me nervous going in. The stand-up was pretty even, and then on the ground I'd even call it even, because although Carl was positionally in control most of the time, Berkman was a lot more threatening with the submissions until the fourth round. Carl lands a takedown, Berkman reverses him, and essentially falls straight into a triangle choke and goes unconscious before the referee is able to get him off. Great showing for Steve Carl, definitely the biggest win of his career. He's on quite a roll. Now he's got a belt. Good for Steve Carl.
I was impressed by Steve Carl. No ifs, ands, or buts. When I watching Berkman roll around like he did with Fitch, really, really impressed me. Right, like it did. But and then seeing somebody turn that into a submission late in the game, watching him not get flustered or angry, I want to see more of Carl. I'm not going to this is the best I've seen him, but I kind of dismissed him in this fight. I didn't think he had it in him, and I definitely didn't think he had a fourth round submission. I mean, that takes a special type of tough to stay composed and strong that far.
Sure, yeah. And it was a good fight. Really, even what a championship fight should look like, really. I was really impressed with both guys, and you can't really complain, you know? Like, you got what you wanted.
Yeah.
The co-main event... I'm sorry, go ahead, DJ.
I just have to say, earlier just this year, I was talking about how I never saw a fight end in the fourth or fifth round and how I was questioning the legitimacy of five-round title fights. But this year alone, I believe I've seen 4. Is that like 4 big ones?
Yeah.
There was the shoulder kick. There was the knockout this weekend. It was pretty nuts.
Yeah.
It's
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last thing you said.
I just said not this weekend, last weekend, but with the heavyweight fight.
Sure. Gives a little bit of attention to Marlon Moraes looking so tough against Carson Beebe. I would have expected Carson Beebe's approach was to try to slow this kid down and grind him and tire him out and see what he could do. Instead, Carson just kind of waded forward, tried to put the pressure on him, and took a couple of big shots that seemed to scramble his head, kept pushing forward, eventually caught, I believe it was a left hook that put him down, and it was a pretty quick fight. The actual time was 32 seconds into round 1. Tough loss for Carson Beebe there. Marlon Moraes looking fantastic, still on a roll. John Fitch's fight was a tough one. The guy he's fighting I wasn't familiar with this Alfava. The guy looked enormous. And John Fitch is a big 170, and this guy looks huge.
Huge 170.
Yeah, and I tell you what I really noticed in this fight is John Fitch's past 5 fights, this has been the roughest patch of his career. It's been the ground where John Fitch has been exploited more. His hands looked amazing on Saturday night. Oh, for John Fitch, I mean, I wouldn't put him in any Muay Thai matches anytime soon, but his hands looked really improved. He had a lot of success, but he was taken down repeatedly, and I don't know if he's just too much attention to his hands or if guys have figured out his game or what it is, but the grappling is where John Fitch has been struggling a little bit. That being said, I thought it was a clear decision. I thought he took the last 2 rounds, but it was a split. He still walks away with the win, and he's back in the winner's circle. And with Steve Carl having the title, maybe one more win, and John Fitch will be fighting for that title.
I think if this would have been a more impressive win for Fitch, he would be fighting for that title next. I'm with you.
I
do think he won this. I don't really see how they gave this as a split. I felt like he took the last 2, but subjectively, I like John Fitch. I've met the guy. He's a super nice guy, a very smart man, good dude, but objectively, his fights are almost unwatchable. And I have a really hard time. I do. I wish I didn't.
Yeah.
I wish I liked the guy more, but I don't. He's a fine fighter. I just don't know where to put him. It was different a generation of fighters ago where it was a contrast of styles, and you were like, what's better, wrestling or jiu-jitsu? Let's goddamn it, let's find out. But in MMA, if you're a wrestler that's not knocking people out, I don't really want to see you fight that much. And I'm sorry if that makes me biased, but I know I'm not in this.
Yeah, and I mean, that always has been the knock against John Fitch. He wasn't that exciting. I'll say this, though. This fight, he was trying to knock the dude out. Like, every time he got top position, his ground and pound was looking better than it has in the past, and he definitely was trying to get a finish here. It just didn't come for him. Obviously, Alfava was tough. They kept talking about how gassed both men were, and I'm sure they were tired. They've been grappling for 15 minutes, but they weren't really sucking wind and looking that tired, in my opinion. I think it's sometimes the commentators like to create the drama.
I was going to say that too, and I also feel like most fight commentators are morning quarterbacks. A lot of them are old fighters or whatever, and there's a big difference between tired and gassed. Like,
Sure.
tired's appropriate. Like, tired's what happens when you fight for 15 minutes. Gas is
if you're
when you're
not
no
tired,
longer fighting.
I think that's yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you're
Gas
not tired in a 15-minute fight, that's worse. That something else is going on. That's scary. Being gassed is understandable. Being tired is just fine. Not being tired would be scary.
Yeah, it might just be like a made-up phrase in my head, but like when I hear gassed, it means that you're not fighting properly anymore, not just like worn out.
Sure. When I think gassed, I think about most recently, I always bring up the heavyweight fight between Mark Hunt and Ben Rothwell in high altitude. Yep.
That's even the one that I was thinking of right there, too. Like, that's the one I was thinking of also. That's odd that we both could have drawn from hundreds of fights. But no, but that's what gassed is. Gassed is when I think I might be able to step into the octagon and end the fight.
Right.
That's when someone's gassed.
Gassed is Gary Goodridge tapping out to Don Fry due to exhaustion because he couldn't grapple anymore. Yeah.
It's an overuse of the term.
Yeah. Gas is me rolling with my younger brother for more than 45 seconds. That's gas. Yeah. When I vomit afterwards because we grapple.
So by your opinion, nobody's gassed unless they're crying?
Yeah, exactly. If there's not fluid moving your body, coming from your body, you're not gassed. Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. All right, I think right now we're going to throw this over to commercial. We're going to try to get Julia Budd in here, and then we will talk about the UFC recap in between the interviews here in the first hour. So right now we're going to commercial. We will be back in a minute, 32 seconds.
This is Real Combat Media Radio. Check us out at realcombatmedia.com. While you're there, check out the Feed the Poor link on the bottom of every article, and you can send a donation if you're interested. That is, once again, on the bottom of every article as well as on the top of the website. If you are an MMA, boxing, or fitness business and interested in sponsoring our website or radio podcast, send us an email. Advertising at realcombatmedia.com. Once again, that is advertising at realcombatmedia.com. Make sure to check out the Real Combat Media MMA and boxing store at the top of the menu at realcombatmedia.com. We carry a collection of products. We have the Cardio Mask, which is excellent for all fighters, endurance athletes, and serious fitness enthusiasts. Once you are in the Real Combat Media store, click on the banner on that page. We also carry Alpha Brain. Alpha Brain is a great and natural product which activates your brain's neurotransmitters and helps you think more clearly, which improves brain function. You can also purchase the world's healthiest plant protein, which comes from hemp. There are many other products online on the online store, and click on the On It banner at the Real Combat Media store, and you can purchase Alpha Brain and other health products. Use the discount code Real Combat Media, and you will receive 10% off at the checkout store on the On It. That is ONNIT on the banner at Real Combat Media store. Buckle up. Here we go. Let's get this show started.
All right, we are back here, Real Combat Media, MMA Radio. Isaac Lampert here with DJ Dangler, and we are now being joined by Julia the Jewel Budd. Julia, how are you this evening?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Fantastic.
I'm terrific.
So I guess first and foremost, we'll put out there, Julia, you will be fighting against Charmaine Tweet on December 7th on the Invicta card. This is correct?
This is correct.
All right. What can you tell us about your opponent, Charmaine Tweet?
She's a Muay Thai fighter from Saskatchewan in Canada as well. So we're both Canadian girls, and I've wanted to fight her for a long time in kickboxing as well as MMA. So I'm looking forward to this fight. Yeah,
and I think it's interesting because you point out that she's a kickboxer, but she's got a gang of submissions on her record here in MMA.
Yeah, I know. I just noticed that she's got 3 of her last fights are all submission wins. So she's, developed her ground game as well.
Yeah, definitely interesting there. And you bring up you wanted to fight her in kickboxing as well, because as I'm looking over, and I already knew that you came from the kickboxing background, but as I was looking over, I guess I wasn't aware of how impressive that your record was in Muay Thai. What was your record?
I think it was 9-1 when I switched over to MMA.
Nice. Are you done? Or you think you go back to some kickboxing fights? Or are you going to stick with MMA? Or are you going to jump back and forth?
I'm going to stick with MMA. I love it so much. I love being able to, go to the ground and finish the fight there as well. So I think I'm going to stick with this. But yeah, now watching Glory and all all the Glory fights, it makes me kind of want to do it again. But I'm too into MMA now.
I see that you just got your first submission. It sounds like you liked it.
Yeah.
You developed a little bit. Yeah, it had to. That had to be rewarding. You work on something and you see it pay off.
Exactly. And I always look to finish on the ground with elbows and strikes, and so it was kind of neat to actually finish with submission. But
yeah, I mean, you add that to the arsenal, it makes it that much more dangerous going into the fights for sure. And I do want to point, not to harp on the kickboxing career for too much longer, but another notable fact that you were the only woman to defeat Gina Carano in competition as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Decorated career.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's pretty amazing.
I
saw a whole slew of American movie badasses get stomped by Gina Carano, right? I'm pretty sure. I think Antonio Banderas got his ass kicked. I think maybe Jason Statham. She's a killer.
Yeah, definitely.
She's kicking ass in the movies now.
Yeah. So let's talk about the present. Let's talk about Invicta. Since coming over, you've got 3 wins under the banner. And when I'm looking over Invicta, I'm looking at the roster and I'm saying you have to have the biggest role going in your weight class in the organization right now. And I'm wondering if that means maybe another win here in December if you will be able to challenge for that title. What do you think?
I think so. I'm not sure what they're planning on doing. I think Ian Gomes is also up there with me. She was who I was supposed to fight in July, and then I guess I don't know what she's up to, but I thought I was originally going to be fighting on Invicta, and then when we heard about Charmaine, we were like, sure, for sure, it's another tough fight and it'll be good. But I think me and Edian are both kind of there right below Cyborg, so one of us will get the title shot.
And timetable-wise, I mean, I would say they're probably going to be trying to figure out Cyborg's next fight sooner than later, and it might work out, after this fight, depending on how it goes. That'd be fantastic for you, of course. Get a little gold to carry around. Exactly.
Yeah, no, it'll be good. I've all this last year, I was kind of, they mentioned that I'm one fight away from having a title fight. So, I just got to prove again and finish, in an exciting fashion and show that I do deserve that title shot.
Right. One thing I need to ask is you're the first fighter on the Invicta roster that we've had on the show, and I've been really curious about, and you may not know the answer to this, but just how things are working in Invicta with the UFC. There seems to be, for that 135-pound weight class, kind of an open door going on with a rotation of the fighters, and I have to think that has to be tempting to the rest of the women in the organization about changing to that weight class. Do you ever think, could you even make 135 if you wanted to?
I think I can now. I'm walking around a lot lighter than I was. I always kind of balloon up between fights. I just enjoy. I love eating and I celebrate and stuff. So I balloon up a lot. And then this last, I'd say July and August, I was walking around at 150 pounds, and that's an easy weight cut to 135.
Sure.
So. I lost a bunch of weight, and I was just like, okay, this would be easy. So definitely in the future, I think I could make it. But this is such a good opportunity right now, and Invicta's really kept me busy at 145. So it's such a good weight for me as well. And in January, February, we'll see, and maybe I'll go down to 135.
Right, and if you're fighting in Invicta, 145 is looking pretty deep right now.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I kind of, with this, I'm really happy at Invicta, and I don't want to I'd be happy fighting there for the rest of my career. But we'll see what goes on. And I think that they've got a lot of talent now in the 145, so I'm pretty happy in this division.
Sure. And I don't want to by any means disenfranchise Invicta at all, because it's a fantastic promotion. I sometimes, because of how the women have been moving back and forth from the UFC and Invicta, I always worry that, when the WEC was still kicking and they had the welterweight division, Carlos Condit, I felt, never really got his respect because he wasn't the UFC champ, he was the WEC champ, and I feel like that Invicta 135-pound weight class is going to kind of have that same problem.
Yeah. You know what? I think it kind of will, because then you're wanting to see who the real division. And the UFC Ronda, and I think that the 135ers, it's for sure, we'll see if they go back and forth or how they do it, but you'd want to see them fight.
Right, as you said, there are plenty of women at 145 to fight, and you guys have Cyborg over there at 145, and that's a big name, and more people around the country and the world might know Ronda Rousey now, but all of us that have been watching the sport, we know Cyborg, and that's just as big of a prize of a fight, if not more so. She's been around longer. She's proven herself even more than Ronda, not to disrespect the champion, but that's the fact of the matter. So you definitely could hang around and help Invicta just keep growing as it is, and I don't by any means want to imply that the jump needs to be made for a nice career for a female mixed martial artist.
Yeah, exactly, and I feel like Invicta's really gaining momentum, and it's a place to be as a woman fighter, and now UFC's got the 135ers, but we'll see if they branch out or anything, but they're really just promoting that one weight class, so it's kind of nice with Invicta. They promote everybody, and we've got, the 105ers and every weight division, and there's stars in all of them, and you're starting to see it's exciting. Like, we look forward to the people at the gym, and the guys at the gym look forward for the female fights and the Invicta cards more than a lot of the UFC cards, because that every fight you're going to be watching is going to be exciting. It's just there's just a different excitement to the women fights now.
I am 100% in love with women's MMA right now. I love the nebulous stage it's in. I love seeing the very dynamic fight styles, and I really love watching women's MMA right now.
Yeah, me too. I love it. And even with the Tough show and everything, we're only watching it the nights that the girls are actually fighting. When the guys fight, we're like, okay. We're like, oh, the girls fighting this week, and then nobody wants to watch it when the guy fights are on.
Well,
I think what's interesting,
you can watch tiny guys punch each other anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
What I do like about...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying exactly the UFC cards are... I feel like there's a UFC card with guys on it like twice a week, or it's all the time now. So it doesn't have that excitement factor that some of the cards do. Like, I was so excited for the UFC with Kane and Dos Santos.
Oh yeah.
But, you know what I mean? Like, you don't get the same excitement that you used to have, because you used to look forward to the fight cards so much, and now there's so many of them that you want something different. And I think that's where the women fighters are really bringing it in.
I think you're 100% right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And on the Tough show itself, I watch it, but I am much more interested in the women's fights, and it's because this is the 19th season of Tough, and they've done 135 pounds how many times? When the original season of Tough came out, which it snuck up on me, I didn't even know it was happening until it was on television, because I was focusing so much more on the stuff happening in Japan at the time. But those guys were really good fighters that were on the show.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to disrespect the guys on the show now, but it's still a fast track into getting on the big cards. But guys that have the really impressive records that are really kicking ass kind of jump into one of the bigger organizations without going through the Tough route now. But the women
exactly,
that are
they don't
on
have
Tough,
to go
it's a
through
great
that.
showcase. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And we have you on the line. We can talk about the sport and we can talk about all this, but I do want to talk about your upcoming fight a little bit. And just, is there anything, are you the type of fighter, do you train specifically for your opponents, or do you just kind of train it all in the Vanderlei Silva style, where it's I train everything so I'm prepared, or are you really looking at tape and all that sort of thing?
We train specifically for the opponent, but what I've learned is every fight with Invicta I've had last minute changes. So it's like we develop a game plan specifically for the person that I'm fighting, but I'm ready for everything. We train everything as well, but I've also got a game plan developed for the person.
Sure. And this particular opponent, like as you said, you've been familiar with her for quite some time now, and so you wanted to fight her in the kickboxing ring. Do you think that you have the superiority if it stays on the feet, then that you could handle it there and not even have to worry about the ground game if that's the way the fight goes?
Yeah, and I think that I'm better on the ground too. I think I'm better overall, and I feel like I'm a more complete mixed martial artist. I love wrestling and I love that aspect, but Muay Thai is my true, like that's what I want to do. That's what I love. So it's like, and I've wanted to fight her in Muay Thai as well. So I feel confident that I can beat her on my feet. I can beat her on the ground. I can beat her off my back. I'm pretty confident in this fight. So I'm just looking for another, a great performance and to show Invicta that I deserve that title.
Yeah, for sure.
I just always wonder
DJ?
how polite is a fight between two Canadian fighters? Like, not in the ring, of course, but like afterwards. Got to think a lot of thanks so much for taking the fight. Got to think it's really hospitable. Is that a fair assessment, or am I way off the mark?
You know what? I don't know. I don't know how polite it is. I don't really know what she's like as a person.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm not looking to make any friends, so.
I'm not going to lie to you, Julia. I'll be pulling for you, and I'm rooting for you. But how great of a nickname is Charmaine Not So Sweet Tweet? That's pretty.
well, it rhymes, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's really hard for me. It's really, as an English major in the past, it's hard for me to not have a little affinity for a rhyme scheme nickname. But I hope you knock her off her feet, Tweet.
Me too.
Yeah, there you go.
Look, I did that on the spot. I'm real fucking talented.
Before we cut you loose, Julia, definitely anything you want to get out there and, plug the Twitter and all that sort of thing, definitely this is your opportunity.
Yeah, no, I just want to say thank you to everybody in my gym. They're, my family. So I just want to say thank you to everyone at Gibson MMA, and thanks to you guys for having me on the show, and thanks to Invicta Fights.
Thank
all
you
right,
so much.
Fantastic. Yeah, it was legitimately fun talking to you, Julia. And we appreciate you coming on the show.
Have a good night, guys.
Yeah, good night.
Okay, bye.
Bye. All right, DJ, you still riding with me?
Yeah, I am. What a neat, lovely killing machine is Julia Budd, huh?
Yeah, very nice woman there. And, it's hard, we talked even before the show that, I don't want to bombard somebody. We have two women on the show tonight, and I don't want to bombard either of them with all of my questions about the entire women's side of this sport and, give them their focus as an individual as they should get it. But it's hard. I have a million questions because as much as things are the same, things are different.
It's almost just how unfair is it to be like, hey, Julia, speak for every woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a little, hey, I'm going to ask you to tell, but I think it's changing more and more. I love it that these athletes are allowed to become just athletes. We've talked about it before. I love Ronda Rousey's attitude, and I love it that it's not Gina Carano's, and I love it that they're both names in the sport. I love Cyborg's attitude and the possibility that she really is a cyborg.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? And Julia, what I really like about women's MMA at the moment is that we're still in that era where all these women have fought each other. It's like looking at the old UFCs where it's all the same guys fought each other in the beginning, and that's what we're seeing. On Julia's record, although it was in kickboxing, she fought Gina Carano. Already she's fought, Nunez. She's fought Rousey. She's rattling off all these people, and I'd say I'm about 90% sure that she's going to be having a title shot early next year. Like maybe Invicta's cards are a little far apart. Might be the spring, because I know Cyborg probably doesn't care about sitting on the shelf. If they got to have a fight in between, Julie's going to be fighting. If she wins this fight, she'll be fighting for the title her next fight, whether it's against Cyborg or if Cyborg slips up against somebody else they offer her. But she's going to get there. You don't put a run like this together and look as impressive as she has and not get rewarded, especially, Invicta's roster isn't huge. It's a much thinner roster than if you're looking at something like the UFC or something like that.
Mm-hmm. It's not awful. It's just human. I'm not going to apologize at all. It was so funny when you were talking about cutting weight as a man with 4 older sisters. My immediate reaction was just to be like, you look amazing. You look great. You look really healthy. That was my immediate. I hope that doesn't make me dismissive, but no, it's a weird thing, cutting weight. And to be honest, I don't know female physiology enough, but all of these fighters just look so lean. I can't imagine them dropping down much.
Right, and like you say, I don't either. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. I know there are differences between men and women. I learned that early on in life. I can carry that much with me. I figured that out on my way to one child and another on the way. But it certainly, there has to be differences in the weight cutting and all of those things. I mean, for one, women have breasts. That's extra, not a lot. That's some extra weight you're carrying.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's interesting. And I'm glad, I asked, and I'll be asking the same question to Leslie about the 135-pound division, because she just left that division, to go down to 125. Yeah. But does it draw you in because you're like, hey, I could fight in Invicta and, have a pretty solid career, or I could go to 135 and I might be on the UFC. I could be a coach on Tough. I could do this. I could be on the pay-per-view and whatever what's the magazine where all the athletes are naked?
Yeah, that's the Sports Illustrated Bodies.
Yeah, that. You can see how well I follow mainstream
any
sports.
Magazine and my photo. Both.
Yeah, that's what you do on your spare time. You just Photoshop LeBron James into the nude.
It is. That's what I here's the thing. It's not even a sex thing. It's just a curiosity thing.
It's like,
I just want to see Butterbean naked. What? That's not weird.
I think the conversation has taken this route, but I'm going to continue down it anyway. And I'm just going to say how, if you ever come across these porno sites where it's the worst, celebrity fake, it's just a photo of their head on a moving body type of thing. And
no,
I'll still look at
but
it.
I want to start making them.
Well, it'll be like Jennifer Aniston's head talking to Conan O'Brien, and then there's just some, not matching at all porn actress's body getting railed underneath it. And you just have to look at it. You're like, all right.
Did you know from the neck down, Jennifer Aniston is Asian? I did not.
Yeah, good grief. What have we done?
Mm-hmm.
I think we might have a couple. What'd you say, DJ?
I was going to say, I just want to make a jib-jab porn type.
A jib-jab? I don't know what that is, DJ.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. The big talking jaws, they used to be the Guinness commercials.
Oh, okay. I know you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is the second episode in a row, but it's at least 2 out of 3 that we've started talking about porno, and I don't like this connection between talking about fights and immediately going to porno. I think there's implications here.
They're probably the 2 things I use my computer the most for. That's probably it.
There you go. All right.
Yeah,
I will take
it's either this or talk about Gmail and Facebook, and that's boring.
Let's talk a little bit about this UFC card that happened. We have a few minutes before we get Leslie Smith in here. Maybe we'll break it over, each side of her interview, but we can at least throw it out here. I'll quickly read off results. Brad Scott takes out Michael Cooper by submission in the first round. Jim Hedges takes out Robert Whiteford, technical submission triangle choke round 2. Cole Miller takes out Andy Ogle, unanimous decision. Jessica Andrade puts a beating on Rosie Sexton for 3 rounds. Luke Barnett submission rear naked choke off of Andrew Craig for fight of the night. Al Alaquinta picks up another win over Peter Hallman via unanimous decision. John Lineker misses weight but still gets TKO over Phil Harris. Nicholas Musoke, I'm going to assume is how his last name's pronounced, defeats Alessio Sakara. Well, like no one saw that coming, that Alessio Sakara would lose via submission armbar for the submission of the night. Norman Park takes out John Tuck by decision. Jimmy Minowa, I did not see this fight. Ryan Jimmo's leg exploded is what it sounds like. He was backing up and fell down. Fight was over.
Yeah. Yep, it was a weird, like, what just happened? Yeah, it was one of those people looked for a sniper's bullet for a second.
Yeah, Melvin Gillard, no contest with Ross Pearson due to illegal knee cuts. And Lyoto Machida makes quick work of Mark Munoz with a head kick in the first round for knockout of the night. On the main event, Mark Munoz looked confused. For guys that train together, he did not look like he was very comfortable standing there with Lyoto Machida. I believe Munoz threw 3 strikes, didn't land any of them, and there were only 13 strikes thrown or landed in the whole fight. Basically, Lyoto blasted him a couple of good body kicks. Munoz thought the next kick was probably coming to the body. Hand wasn't as high as it could have been, although he partially blocked. The left kick put him down. Fight was over. No follow-up punches. Lyoto Machida enters the middleweight division, jumps straight into the UFC's top 10. Already talks about him fighting Vitor Belfort, who really was probably long overdue for a title shot, even though he's about to fight at 205 again. That'd be great. Michael Bisping was injured, pulled out of the fight. Lyoto steps in and rockets himself right up. Kind of how I expected it to go. He's just a better fighter than Mark Munoz. And Melvin Gillard, Ross Pearson. I know you didn't get to see all the fights either. I had a busy weekend. I was able to catch most of them. Did you see the Melvin Gillard knees to Ross Pearson?
It's Melvin Gillard is such a spaz that I have a hard time not always saying it's his fault, but this was just kind of a messy pay-per-view. I don't really blame the UFC. I call it. It wasn't a heinous kick. It wasn't or a knee rather. It wasn't brutal. They were just fighting. He wasn't sloppy. I don't think Pearson was gaming him. I don't know. I'm not nuts about that rule, period. I don't really know what happened.
Sure.
Like, I understand that it's so you don't kick a guy in the head when he's down. But
right.
Down is a gray area with a guy when you're in a fight. You know, like, how many people have knocked people out from their knees? I don't know, but I know it's happened.
Sure. And I mean, I understand this rule is really designed about soccer kicks or the Mark Coleman, kneeing Allen goes to death from the turtle position, front headlock, That's why this rule is there. What happened, though, on Saturday night, like, the angles are weird, with the cameras to try to see exactly what happened. The way I saw it was, luckily, it wasn't Ross Pearson playing the rules or anything. He got kneed in the head. He to gain balance, his hand touches the ground. He gets kneed again. I'm not sure if a knee might have been down on one of those, but either way, Gillard was in motion when he threw the second knee. It wasn't like it wasn't like when Michael Bisping kneed Jorge Rivera in the face, like, blatantly. Like, which still is just a heat of the game thing, I think. But, like, Gillard was in motion, and you're right, he is kind of a spaz. He's going. The cut stops the fight. I think even if it would have been declared a TKO, no one would have been happy about this because Ross Pearson wasn't hurt. He was fine. Fighter safety, I'm not disagreeing with stopping it because of the cut. I'm just saying if it was a TKO, everyone would want to see the rematch anyway. So it's a no contest. Maybe it sucks for Gillard because he doesn't get a win bonus. I understand that financially, but they can rebook this fight. We can see what's going to happen because what surprised me in this is that Gillard landed a couple of right hands on Pearson, and Pearson seemed to just take them like it wasn't too much of a problem. But the way it was going off the bat, Gillard was landing a lot. And although Pearson was shrugging it off, I don't know how much of that he really could take in the long run.
I think it's rare, but I've never seen it happen before. But I almost feel like Pearson's jaw is improving. I don't really think that's something you can work on. You know, I don't know how that happened. I don't know if he's taking some skull thickening agent, but or it might be that Gilliard is working more on combinations than just throwing his hands as hard as he can. Because he looked.
Yeah, I think
it sounds crazy to say when somebody gets essentially DQ'd or the no contest or whatever you want to call it. He didn't look as fast. He was fast. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that might have been part of the reason that Pearson was taking those right hands is that they were fast, but they weren't like his entire body behind him like he's done in the past where he's got himself off balance and flopping around because he's swinging so hard. It was definitely more measured and looking to pace himself maybe a little bit more and stay light on his feet. Pearson's a dog, though, man. That guy just trudges forward and it can be a scary thing when you're fighting someone like Melvin Gillard. Because with Melvin, we've seen a bunch of times, like, people get him to the ground, they can exploit him, but he's pretty good at keeping them from getting them to the ground. Ross isn't the most accomplished of wrestlers. I was expecting to see a lot of clinch work against the cage, and we probably would have, or maybe a couple more of those knees without the ref jumping in, and the fight would have been finished. No way to tell, so maybe we'll get the rematch and we'll get to see what happens. I would actually like to talk about the... Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely some more things to say about this card, and we will do that. But first, we're going to throw the commercial. We're going to try to get Leslie Smith in here, and then after the interview, we can touch back on this before we do the previews. So as of now, we are going to commercial. We'll be back in a minute 32.
This is Real Combat Media Radio. Check us out at realcombatmedia.com. While you're there, check out the Feed the Poor link on the bottom of every article, and you can send a donation if you're interested. That is, once again, on the bottom of every article as well as on the top of the website. If you are an MMA, boxing, or fitness business and interested in sponsoring our website or radio podcast, send us an email. Advertising at realcombatmedia.com. Once again, that is advertising at realcombatmedia.com. Make sure to check out the Real Combat Media MMA and boxing store at the top of the menu at realcombatmedia.com. We carry a collection of products. We have the Cardio Mask, which is excellent for all fighters, endurance athletes, and serious fitness enthusiasts. Once you are in the Real Combat Media store, click on the banner on that page. We also carry Alpha Brain. Alpha Brain is a great and natural product which activates your brain's neurotransmitters and helps you think more clearly, which improves brain function. You can also purchase the world's healthiest plant protein, which comes from hemp. There are many other products on the online store, and click on the On It banner at the Real Combat Media store, and you can purchase Alpha Brain and other health products. Use the discount code Real Combat Media, and you will receive 10% off at the checkout store on the On It. That is ONNIT on the banner at Real Combat Media store. Buckle up. Here we go. Let's get this show started.
All right, we are back, Real Combat Media, MMA Radio. Isaac Lamford and DJ Dangler here. Unfortunately, we were not able to get a hold of Leslie on this call. Leslie Smith, we were supposed to be talking to about her upcoming title fight with Invicta. Hopefully, in the next hour we get that figured out. I'm sure it's just some scheduling conflict, training, running long, that sort of thing. We'll get it together. But if you want to join in with us, we're talking right now the recap of the UFC fight night that just happened in England. You can call us at 347-324-5998. You can hit us on Twitter at Real Combat Media and find Real Combat Media on Facebook. We were talking about, before we broke, we were talking about the Melvin Gillard-Ross Pearson fight. Maybe we got out what needed to be said there, but I want to hear your thoughts on the Lyoto Machida-Mark Munoz fight, DJ.
I am excited. I'm always excited when a fighter I like drops weight classes. I mean, how can you not be? I think Machida is a stud. I am on board. I like him a lot. I want to see Weidman really sooner more than I wanted to see Machida fight. I've told you this, fighting at junior weight classes, I've always wanted to see Machida fight Anderson Silva.
Oh, yeah,
really
that'd be beautiful.
Yep, I've always wanted to see Anderson Silva's beautiful stand-up versus the unorthodox karate. I'm even interested, though. I want to see Power go up against the weird karate stance.
Sure. Machida, what I hear is that Machida had just said that he would fight Anderson if it was for the belt. So that's pretty interesting, as they've trained together a long time. That would be a interesting matchup to see. We do have a call coming in right now, and I think I know who this is, but let's see what's going on. Hello, you are on the air, Real Combat Media MMA Radio. Who are we speaking to?
Hey, this is Thor. What's going on, guys?
Oh, right on. Thor Lanford, my younger brother, who actually was the guest co-host for last episode. Thor, how are you doing? Have you been listening? Do you know what's going on?
No, I just heard the last bit of what you guys were saying.
Yeah, right on. Did you hear the interview with Julia Budd at all?
No.
It was good. You'll have to go back and listen to it. Currently,
yeah, for sure.
We were talking about the Mark Munoz and Lyoto Machida fight and the Ross Pearson. We already kind of threw out our thoughts, but if you want to give us your thoughts on what was the two top fights on the card, go for it.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk about the Machida fight, because between Anderson Silva and Lyoto Machida, I think they're my favorite fighters. You know, I don't tend to pick favorites. I just like certain things about guys, but I do find myself drawn to the Brazilian guys for some reason, because I really like Vitor Belfort as well. But with Machida, in that fight, honestly, I was watching it with my girlfriend's brother, and I was just saying it looks like Munoz doesn't really know what to do, and he has his back against the fence, and I figured those body kicks were really hurting him, and I kind of alluded to the Benson Henderson, Anthony Pettis fight, where Benson went in for that desperate takedown, and ended up getting armbarred because of those body kicks, and Machida just went low and high. He does that a lot, but, I don't necessarily know if that means his knockout power, because he's hit guys with that before at 205. I don't know if that means his knockout power is even more deadly at 85, because Mark Munoz does not have the greatest chin. But I think he just did not see that kick coming, and the way that his hips swiveled when he landed that, he went back to his stance. It's not like it wasn't like a grazing, where he still spun all the way around. Like, the shin took the full impact on top of the head, like right above the guard. And, it was really classy, too, that he didn't hit him. He knew he was done afterwards.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
With a walk-away victory. They're cool in baseball. They're better in fighting.
And Thor, I want to hear you chime in real quick on the co-main event. The knees that caused the cut on Pearson, legal, not legal, who cares? Just get a rematch. What do you think?
I think, I don't think Pearson was done, and the second knee I would say was illegal, although the first knee I felt like was completely legal. You can't really play that game, but, what it all comes down to is fights are going to go that way sometimes if you don't kind of modify that rule a little bit. I feel like if you get kneed in the face and you're falling down but you tripod on your hand, then you should still kind of be up.
Right.
Yeah. Do you feel, I'm sorry, I might have misunderstood you. Do you feel like Pearson was gaming it a little bit or no?
I'm sorry?
Did you feel like Pearson was trying to game the system a little bit or no?
It seemed to me like when he was hurt, that was instinct to, not get taken down by Melvin Gillard, and he tripoded on that hand, which made it illegal, but I think a lot of people play that game.
Sure.
So maybe not in that instance, but, I just think that there needs to be a modification to the rule that you can't play the game, and also, if you're hurt and you decide to tripod on that hand, you shouldn't necessarily be down. Maybe because it was against the fence, I can see why maybe the rule could be modified. You can't do that against the fence, because then their head would be pinned up against an object.
Yeah, no,
right.
I'm with you. I think it is. I think this was an unfortunate situation. I don't think Pearson, though, was trying to get. I don't think he was trying to get Gillard to throw an illegal kick, and I certainly don't think he was I don't think he was cognizant of what he was doing.
No, I think that he just tripoded because he was really hurt from that first knee, and I thought the first knee was clean. I don't know if anyone else disagreed with that, but I thought the first knee was clean.
Yeah, I know referee has stood by the call, and that's a messy rule. But regardless, the fight was stopped, and it wasn't stopped because of an illegal knee. It was stopped by the doctor because of the cut. And so, as I was saying right before you called in, I understand it might hurt Gillard's purse because he doesn't get a win bonus, but really, no one would have been satisfied if it was a TKO. They need a rematch. With you here, Thor, I do want to take advantage of you because DJ and I know we both worked all weekend, and like I caught a good chunk of these fights that happened, and I read the recaps on the rest. I only saw about the first round of the Andrade-Sexton fight. Was it as rough as what Dana White was making it out to be?
I mean, it was pretty rough, man, but you know, I don't know. I mean, there were moments, but you know, it kind of, like I said before with the Junior Dos Santos fight, I think it kind of comes down to the corner, you know, when the referee is, you know, letting them fight, because some referees will let it go, you know, to really crazy extent sometimes, and, you know, it might be up to the corner, and, you know, do you really think your fighter is going to win this fight, you know, after a beating, you know, taking such a beating, you know? Kenny Florian on Twitter was also calling for them to throw in the towel, and to me, a dude who's been in there, you know, would know that the fighter
had the towel thrown for him before.
I'm sorry.
If somebody knows about when towels should be thrown in, it's Florian. Yeah,
exactly. Sure. He's been in there, you know. He knows when, and he knows that the fighter's not going to quit.
Yeah.
Right, and you know, I think there is a difference too when you're talking about Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos. You're talking about the main event, the heavyweight championship, and a heavyweight. You're talking about a guy who has knockout power in his hands all the way through the fight. That's not the same with Rosie Sexton. It wasn't a title fight.
That's true, too.
She doesn't have the power late in the third round. I mean, not saying she doesn't have it. It's less likely she's going to score a Hail Mary knockout. And this is a woman, too, who doesn't need to fight. This is a woman who, you know, is educated and has a job and can take care of herself otherwise. She might be mad at the corner, but that is what the corner is there for. If she's down as bad as what these scores have her, like there's two judges that had this 30-26. And I'm going to go back and watch this, and I'll have my opinion formed afterwards. But if it was that bad of a beating, her corner should have thrown in the towel. They absolutely should have, because she had nothing to gain by being in there that much longer. What round did she take that bad of a beating that it was a 10-8 round? Do you remember?
It might have been it might have been, I don't know, it started to get ugly, definitely in the second round, but the third round, you know, she might have been she was so beat up, like there was not much resistance left besides surviving, which, you know, kudos to her, she's got heart, you know, but I think you just got to live to fight another day. You know, it isn't the end of the world that you lost. You showed tremendous heart, and you never quit if your corner throws in the towel, you know?
Right. Yeah, for sure. There's no shame. I mean, and she probably will be mad at her corner. But, you know, I've had this conversation with you, Thor, a million times about fighters want to fight. That's what they're there for. The rest of the guys with you, they're the ones that should be more, like, cool and calculated about things. You can't have meatheads in your corner. You know, hey, what's that, DJ?
This shit would never happen with comedians. Comedians will give you the light as soon as you're awful.
That is very true.
And I'll tell you what, if you just left it up to the idiot on stage, he always thinks he's got that goddamn closer in his pocket. He'll hang up there for 20 minutes just dying. Idiot.
Exactly. Someone's got to turn off the stage lights, and they should do it for their fighters. I'll ask you as well, Thor, because I also have not seen the Manoa-Jimmo fight. Sounds like a weird ending, but was Jimmy looking as good as what Dana White's making that sound like? Like he needs a name next, like he's a killer and he needs to be brought up?
Yeah, who did he fight again?
It was Ryan Jimmo, Jimmy Manoa and Ryan Jimmo.
Yeah, I mean, he looks really good. I mean, he's up-and-comer guy, I mean, maybe the next step, I think there's some respect for Jimmo, and if you put a beating on him.
Yeah. People really complaining lately about Jimmo's. What's that, DJ?
Who was it that Dana White was trading?
Manoa.
Yeah, okay. I thought it was vice versa, yeah, because I was going to say, I thought Jimmo looked like garbage. Yeah, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
Well, I think what the problem is that I was referring to them by their last names, and I think I referred to Manoa by his first name, Jimmy, which is very close to Jimmo's last name. So there you go. I'm assuming that's where the confusion came from. My apologies.
No. Yeah, I know Jimmo's good. I know that. But it sure is hard to care about him, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, he had a huge winning streak up in Canada, and I'd watch those fights, and I love Maximum Fighting Championship. I think they are one of the best, smaller promotions. Their matchmaking is impeccable. But Jimmo just, that weird mix of evasive karate and then clinch work against the ropes up there and then the cage in the UFC, it just doesn't really make for very entertaining fights, unfortunately. Yeah, so DJ, as you said, this card was a little weird, the main event was very fast. The co-main event had a controversial finish. The Manoa-Jimmo fight has a knee pop, Cole Miller, I guess, looked pretty good against Andy Ogle and then called out Conor McGregor. Is it weird to call out a guy who's out with a knee injury? Because I think it is. I get it. He was in England.
These guys don't know when people are getting better.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to move on. Do you guys have anything else to say?
I don't. Is Sakara finally fired? Am I done having to pretend he looks tough?
Oh, God. I hope so. The guy, for his sake, let him fight somewhere else. If he doesn't retire, let him go fight in a smaller promotion because he cannot hang in the UFC.
Clearly, he got beat by a belly-down armbar.
And it
wasn't what an elite fighter should do, right?
Yeah.
It was slick. I'll give him the benefit. That was a very slick armbar, and he looked like he had a fire under his ass. I really don't remember his last fight that he looked like he was, really, really going for it.
That armbar was so pretty. I think it's a testament to the fact that Sakara needs the boot. That armbar was slick the way, like the Boston Crab looks cool when you hit it in pro wrestling. Yeah, it shouldn't work that way because you should be able to fucking stop it.
Fedor got a lot of guys doing that belly down. Fedor caught a lot of dudes, when you're punching, that is one thing, especially I think Sakara doesn't have the best chin, and they were rocking each other, and I think he was probably still not all there, and he just was worried about putting damage on him, and you punch wrong one time, man. It doesn't take long to swivel your hips. And that was a high-level armbar, with all that sweat, you do have to give credit.
Oh, it was a beautiful armbar. It was beautiful, and I want to see more of Masoki, but I want to see lots of Sakara.
Yeah, I agree. Any final thoughts on the UFC card? Thor, you have final thoughts on the UFC card before we move on?
No, I'm hoping you guys are going to talk about the World Series of Fighting.
Oh, you missed the World Series of Fighting conversation, but feel free. What do you got on it?
I missed one of the rounds, or at least part of the rounds in the main event, but I was a little shocked by Berkman's approach, honestly. I just thought that the pace that he fought at was not a 5-round pace. And round number 4, you get after round 3, and then a minute in, he got caught.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think he was looking too much for the finish, or do you think he was just overestimating his endurance?
I think he's knocked a lot of dudes out recently, and I think he threw a lot of that right hook from the southpaw stance, and I think that he just got a little happy with the power shots and kind of forgetting that he could take, some big advantage of, as long as you put a guy on his back and you're a slick guy like Berkman is, you should be able to stay out of things, but you throw a lot of leather, you do get tired, and you have to pace yourself in a 5-round fight, which obviously he's a professional, but I think he was going off of the momentum of the Fitch fight maybe a little bit.
I think that's exactly what happened. I think he just beat Fitch and thought he was a world killer.
Yeah, I mean,
when we had
he
him on the
punches
show,
really hard. He hits really hard.
Oh, he's a stud.
He'll be back too. That's the thing. But John Fitch's fight as well that I wanted to talk about. That was a tough fight, and John Fitch, looked undersized, and it is a thing to see that some guys are attacking Fitch, putting him against the fence, and he's going to work on his wrestling defense, or he might have trouble if a guy can just last for 3 rounds just holding him down.
Absolutely. I want to make quickly a point on the main event, and I would not be surprised to hear that Josh Berkman had some sort of injury going into the fight, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Steve Carl's performance, but when it hit the ground, the way Steve Carl was just slipping into mount and just all over Josh Berkman looked pretty strange to me at first. Because, I don't know if he just got tired or if there was something that was hindering his movement or exactly what happened, but am I wrong there? Is Steve Carl just that good on the mat that I wasn't giving him credit? Do you think so?
He's really good. He's really good on the mat.
Maybe that is all it was.
I thought Berkman on his back
weird.
is at a disadvantage for sure.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. He was sure going for that guillotine the whole fight, though, wasn't he?
Yeah, he definitely was. He was fishing for it.
He was hunting.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I want to move on.
All right, yeah, that's fine.
I want to move on because I want to be able to talk about a few of the upcoming fights, and I want to start with upcoming November 2nd, the Bellator pay-per-view, stillborn, does not come to fruition. The big rampage. I mean, they put together an amazing card. And Thor, I know that you and I talked about this, and DJ, we probably have as well. Most people completely shitting on the main event, Tito Ortiz versus Rampage Jackson, that it was irrelevant, whatever, blah, 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 that these guys are has-beens, yada, yada, yada. My opinion from the get-go has been, yeah, these two guys are not in the primes of their career. I understand that. That's fine. But it's an appropriate fight for each of them because it's a big-name person and someone who is also no longer in their prime. It's an appropriate matchup, and it has to be their main event. And I was saying this to Thor actually earlier today. What people don't seem to realize is that this is a Trojan horse. I don't think they really needed to go the pay-per-view route necessarily, but if they're going to do it, they're going to sell more tickets off of Tito Rampage than they are off of Chandler Alvarez. And that's just by name recognition. Yeah. The average person, you talk to dudes at the bar, they think Chuck Liddell's still the champion. They don't know what's going on in the sport, really. They see pay-per-views at BW3 sometimes, that's about the extent of it. They watch some stuff when it's on free TV. They don't really keep up on what's going on. It's hard for us to realize that because we're constantly reading the news and watching the fights and everything. But Tito Rampage, to a lot of people, sounds like a perfectly reasonable fight. And it's a Trojan horse into the mainstream. That's all it is. You get people to pay attention with those two names that probably won't even realize they're not watching the UFC when they go over to their friend's house. And then you put Chandler Alvarez, and these other title fights that they have lined up, fights like, Emmanuel Newton and King Mo. These are going to be great fights. And you get it in people's space by using Tito. But doesn't happen. Tito Ortiz injures his neck because his body cannot hold up through a training camp, let alone a fight anymore. And Rampage is pulled from the card. Now it moves to Spike TV for a free card. This is amazing. Michael Chandler, Eddie Alvarez, 2 for the lightweight title is your main event. Pat Kern against Daniel Strauss for the featherweight title. Muhammad Lawal against Emmanuel Newton for the interim light heavyweight title, which I'll come back to some controversy about that. Mike Richmond against Akop Stepasvan, which I'm not familiar with these guys. I'll be excited. Mike Bronzoulis against Joe Riggs, the Fight Master TV show final. And then we see some recognizable names in Patrick Cinnaball and Terry Edom. Caro Parisian was just pulled from the fight against Soldier Boy and has been replaced. Mike Gorman is fighting Aaron Miller. Hector Ramirez is going to be on the card, which I'm guessing that's a Rampage favored, why Hector's in Bellator nowadays. But pretty solid undercard even. And then the main event, just title fights, looking stacked, looking fantastic. Let's start with the main event, Michael Chandler, Eddie Alvarez, or if you need to get your thoughts in there about Tito Rampage, you can definitely take that first. But, DJ, I'll go to you to talk about this first.
I'm going to say, when you were making the Trojan horse argument, I was going to say, they have smuggled a great card into this Tito Ortiz Rampage fiasco. Like, this is a solid card. It's 3 title fights with 6 contenders I care about. I think that's an impressive thing, man. I think it's a great card. And yeah, I do still want to see Tito Ortiz fight Rampage. I don't care if they're the best in the world. They're fighters I like seeing. I like their styles. I know they're tough. And a weird part of me has a nostalgia throwback. I would rather watch Pippen and Karl Malone play basketball than 2 guys on teams I don't care about right now.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? Like there is a weird aspect to it that I dig it, and I think these people are still relevant, even if there are people that can beat them. That being said, I'm very excited, and I think if they're not going to have the novelty match, putting it on TV for free is the right move.
Yeah, I do agree. What are your thoughts then on our main event, this Michael Chandler Eddie Alvarez rematch for the lightweight title?
I love the way Alvarez fights. I like the way he fights. I was surprised to see. Yeah, I'm going to go Alvarez. That's all I'm going to do is just say I think Alvarez is going to win. Is it for any particular reason, or is it just your heart backing him up? I think he's better than he's performed lately, so maybe just heart. Yeah, I'm willing to go with heart. I'm not going to,
hey.
As much as I hate for it to be that. You know what I mean? As much as I would love to say, like, no, man, I've done the research, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Give me just a second here, guys. We are about to be joined by our friend Michael Wurst from Memphis, Tennessee. Hello, Michael. Are you there?
Yes, sir. How's it going, guys?
Very good. Mike, just so you know, you were on with myself, DJ Dangler, and my younger brother, Thor Lamper, amateur fighter from here in Indiana. Mike is calling us from Memphis, Tennessee. Mike, we are currently talking the Bellator fight. We just got into it. I'm going to throw it to you immediately and just put in parameters. Give me your thought on the Tito Rampage fight that was supposed to happen, how that planned out, and then you can move into what you think about what is our main event on Spike TV, the Alvarez Chandler 2. You have the floor, sir.
Yeah. I wanted to see it because I'm personally not a Tito fan. I can't stand him. When I first got into MMA, me and a bunch of guys that I was with, they were big Tito fans. I was a big Ken Shamrock fan, so we had several of those battles. But I wanted to see the fight, but it is what it is. So now it is what it is. So I kind of heard the chat about Chandler Alvarez. I'm going for Chandler. I like his versatility. I think he's fought some pretty tough competition, so I think that lends to him winning this fight again.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I do want to say very quickly, you are the first Ken Shamrock fan I've ever met.
It's so hard to stay a Ken Shamrock fan because every year he gets progressively crazier.
Yeah, you expected him to get. It's kind of like I was a big Chuck Liddell fan. But, I knew there was a time when he was like, dude, you just need to hang it up. You're not doing anything. You're just getting your life knocked out. So just stop. And it was the same way with Shamrock, So, I even though I was a fan, I knew he was done when he was done, and it was just kind of, you know, it is what it is. So.
And for, you know, on that point, I think we really do have to look at Tito Ortiz here and say, you know, I made the joke about him not making it through a training camp, let alone a fight, but that's for real. Tito's had a lot of injuries, and, you know, there's a reason he retired. And I know that he, you know, split up with his wife and is rejuvenated and healthy again and wants to get back in there. And that's probably more about not knowing what to do with yourself because you've been a fighter your whole life and you're not anymore, and now you're not a husband anymore either, and you need somewhere to put all of your energy, so he decides to go back. Maybe he needs the money. That might have something to do with it too, but I can't see he's living that bad. Either way it goes, like I really think Tito should maybe really just think about not fighting and figuring out something to do with himself. As far as the main event that we do have go, and Thor, I'll go to you in just a second, but I'm just going to put my thoughts out there. I agree with what Mike said. I think that Eddie Alvarez is great, and he's very, very fun to watch. But looking at the way Michael Chandler has been fighting, like I see it going a lot like the last time. Alvarez is a brawler. He's a scrapper. He's a wild man. He gets dropped in a lot of his fights, and the accuracy, the speed, and the power that Chandler's been dealing with, I just think it flatlines Alvarez again. I think that he's tough enough to hang in for a little bit, but I think, you know, mid-second round, maybe into the third round, we're going to see him on his back again. Thor, what is your take on these two subjects?
Well, you know, the fact of the matter is, I think it is actually a better thing that this is going to be on TV instead of a pay-per-view because, I mean, this is a really good card, and like DJ said, it's people that, like, I care about, you know, like people that I know, and that's a really good main event. And I'm torn because I think that, you know, it's like the first 2.5 rounds, Eddie Alvarez can defeat anybody. It's just after that, if you weather that storm, I feel like he's going to get submitted, especially with a guy like Michael Chandler, you know. So I would say that if it goes past, you know, 2 rounds, then Chandler, I think, is going to pull away with it.
Yeah, I think that's I'm sure what the betting odds are, just based on their last fight and the way Chandler's been rolling and the fact he's the champ and all those sorts of things. But it's a fantastic main event, and it's going to be a good fight. Any way it goes, it's going to be memorable. Their last fight was very memorable. So we take a step down, and I need to check right here just to make sure I have the order correct. Yes, I do. Pat Curran and Daniel Strauss for the featherweight title. You know, when we had Daniel Strauss on the show, I made a comment about so I assume the game plan here is cut off the cage, nullify Curran's footwork, try to pin him against the cage, you know, take him to the ground and do what you do. And I think Daniel was actually a little annoyed with me saying that. I still believe that because I think that Pat Curran's footwork is his best asset. But Daniel was kind of like, no, you know, a lot more is going into a game plan than that. I'm going to beat him to everything. I just need to beat him to the punch. I need to do this. Like, of course, he thinks that he can beat him on the feet. He can beat him on the ground. He can out-wrestle him, everything, you know. And he seemed like he was a bit bothered by what I said to him. I still think that's the game plan, but I got to say, the way Pat Curran moves and the way that their last fight went and their fights since then, I still think that Curran has that advantage in the movement, and he just fights the same in round 5 as he fights in round 1, and I think it really favors him. Mike, what do you think about our co-main event here for the featherweight title?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Pat Curran's a tough dude, and he's very versatile. I actually have a question for Thor, and because when I was researching this fight a little bit, how hard is it for you to come off not fighting for years? It's kind of the same for a football player rehabbing a knee injury. You know, are you kind of rusty? Does it take you like a fight or two to get back in shape and form, or, you know, can somebody come off the bench after a year and still fight their good best?
Well, I actually did a kickboxing match in the summer, but I mean, not really, because I train with a couple professional fighters, so I stay in really good shape. It's just, you know, I'm not looking to do this for a living or anything. It's just something every now and then I like to compete, but I like training more than anything else.
Okay, that's cool because I agree with you, Isaac. I think Pat Curran's going to win. He's got good footwork. He's just got a good all-around game, and I think I agree with you. So I think it's going to be Curran.
Yeah, Thor, what do you think about it? You can go ahead, DJ. That's fine.
No, it was I definitely think ring rust or cage rust or whatever you call it is less than a team sport, just because you are the only guy out there, and while game day is clearly different than practice, in a sport like MMA, I think training is more like fight conditions than really just about any other sport.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it all comes down to how you are mentally, you know. If you're a jittery person, you know, just coping with all those things, and just keeping your adrenaline in check and just your wits about you. That's all it is, you know. It's just, and if you don't have training, then there's absolutely no way you could go fight in a cage.
Right. I think our earlier discussion with the fighter that was sent back to change his shorts, and it messed with his mindset, is indicative of that problem. I mean, if you can be rattled by something like that, then you have more to concern yourself with than your opponent.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
so,
it's something that you shouldn't think about.
Thor, what do you think then on this? Do you think that a layoff is going to be effective, or what do you see happening in the featherweight fight?
You know, I think Pat Curran is, you know, a layoff, especially for those really high-level guys, like, you know, I'll just say, for example, a guy I know, Brady Hoperman, you know, you guys interviewed him last week.
Right. Yeah.
He always is training, and he took a layoff, you know, that's not like him because he has quite a few fights, you know. But he took a little layoff, I think it was a year ago, and, you know, he just really developed some more skills, you know, more traditional stuff instead of just throwing haymakers and being a good wrestler. You know, he learned a lot during that time, and I think the stress of having a fight over your head every 3 months, you're more concerned about just staying in really good shape and preparing for certain things, you know, that your opponent might do, especially when you get to the high level where you got a lot of film to watch on a guy and you know what he's going to try to do to you.
So are we, DJ, you're the only one that hasn't weighed in, or are we unanimous in thinking that Pat Curran's going to retain this title?
Yeah, I think Curran's got over Strauss. I think he's a smarter fighter. I think he gets rattled less. I think he's going to be, I'm not going to say he's going to be able to establish his game plan better, but I think if it's not his game plan, he'll be able to adapt better.
Yeah, I think, like, it has been a while since their last fight, and we may see something different out of Strauss. I think Strauss is the one, obviously he lost their last fight. He's the one that has to make the adjustment. He's got all the athleticism, and he's got the tools to really put it together. Just like I say, at the moment, Curran just seems to be a little bit step ahead. Then we move down. I'm going to set this up. The interim light heavyweight title, there's some confusion here because the champ says that he wasn't injured, that he was just asked to sit on the bench and not fight Emmanuel Newton. And then King Mo wins the next tournament, and they're able to build this. Bellator says champ was injured. Champ says he wasn't injured. Whatever. Winner of this fight will fight him, and whatever. I know this was more marketable. They wanted it on the pay-per-view. I think that was just some shifty business. But it gives us a fantastic fight, a good rematch. Emmanuel Newton, King Mo. Can lightning strike twice for Emmanuel Newton on the upsets of King Mo? Mike, what do you think?
I think so. I think Emmanuel Newton's pretty well-rounded. He's fought some pretty good competition, and I just don't like King Mo, so I'm going for Emmanuel Newton.
Hey, I don't mind the blunt honesty, because you can dance around, you can paint the picture all you want, but sometimes that's what it comes down to. If you don't like a guy, you want to see him lose, you're not going to pick him in a fight. I understand that 100%. Yeah. DJ, what do you think?
King Mo is easy to dislike, but I think he might have it over Newton.
Yeah. Thor?
I think he has gotten some breaks.
I think it's a solid pick. It's definitely the solid pick. Thor, what do you think?
Well, a thing with wrestlers, especially a guy like King Mo, like, man, I'm telling you, it's going to be probably a really frustrating fight, and King Mo's going to come out on top. I don't think he's going to play around. You know, it's hard, you know, for lightning to strike twice, especially the way it did the first time, you know what I mean? Like, I just picture, you know, the guy going to his strengths and being able to dominate that way.
Yeah, their first fight, King Mo looked so cocky. The way he fought, he was not respecting him, which King Mo fights that way. He does. He demoralizes his opponents. He definitely does. And he was playing around. He wasn't keeping his defense high. He, you know, hand speed over his technique, like whatever, and he got caught with a spinning back fist that put him down. That same thing's probably not going to happen. I mean, Newton's a good fighter, but King Mo is an elite competitor. Like, this guy is amazing. I think the only real knocks against King Mo are, you know, he got knocked out by Rafael Feijiao, and he got knocked out by Emmanuel Newton. He said he had a pretty bad knee injury going into the Feijiao fight, and so that's, you know, slowed him down. He didn't perform how he wanted to. The Emmanuel Newton fight was just his arrogance. The way he was not, and I'm not saying Emmanuel Newton couldn't beat him. I'm just saying that particular fight, that's why he got finished. He was playing around. He was being cocky. I think he will be more serious this time. He has something to prove, and hopefully that translates into being safe and executing a good game plan and not trying to be too flashy and try to embarrass the guy in front of him again and get sloppy. But I think King Mo probably pulled this off. If he uses his wrestling especially, King Mo's boxing is great, but his wrestling is amazing.
Is he still training with the Black Zillions?
You know, the last I knew, he was, but I can't say for sure. He might have moved camps.
I'm just going to say a trend with those guys is a little bit of cockiness. If you want to go back to the Alistair Overeem Bigfoot fight, like, you know, there's a few of those guys that kind of, you know, you're not Anderson Silva, and I mean, we saw that finally cost Anderson. But you know, it's just there's no reason to do stuff like that. And to me, almost, you know, those guys doing stuff like that to me is like trying to mask like being kind of tired, especially if you've been trying to wrestle a guy a lot.
Yeah, maybe so. And an interesting note, you know, about the Black Zillions is in that same little run, every time you had someone like a Michael Johnson who was looking really improved by training with them, we got a Rashad Evans performance against Little Nogueira that was awful. We got the Alistair Overeem arrogance against Bigfoot and the King Mo arrogance with Emmanuel Newton. And when you see them all lined up next to each other, you're like, someone's got to put these guys' egos in check. These guys are fighting like idiots. Like, is no one testing them in the gym? Are they just playing when they get there? And I'm sure that's not the case. These guys are professionals, but it really seemed that way. It seemed like they were way overconfident moving into these fights. So hopefully King Mo has his head together. I think if he does have his head together, he's probably going to be able to pull it off. The interesting thing on here, we all agree on these 3 title fights. We're all on board in the Pat Curran win, although, you know, I think it's going to be a good fight either way, and good luck to Daniel Strauss. The Chandler Alvarez, we get one dissenter in DJ going the other way, taking Alvarez, and then we get Mike here taking Emmanuel Newton on this one. We have a dissenter on each of these title fights. So we'll see what happens. You guys should put down some money and you'll win big. Before moving on from this card, am I the only person who that watched the Fight Master show on Spike? Did any of you guys see this?
No, I saw the first episode and then didn't watch anymore.
I did not watch it either.
Yeah,
no, I didn't.
I think that's common consensus across America, to be fair. I did watch it, and, you know, there were some good fights. There were some young talents on there. This Mike Bronzoulis kind of, you know, came out of nowhere. Like, he's tough, really tough Greek kid. He, you know, he looked good. He battled. He had injuries. He was banged up, and he fought his way through the house, seemed to get better in each fight. And Joe Riggs, on the other hand, there was no reason for Joe Riggs to be in that house. Joe Riggs was already fighting in Bellator. Joe Riggs has already fought everybody who's ever fought in mixed martial arts. Every one of his fights was like Joe Riggs not really impressing, like not doing anything devastating, just showing that he was much better and more experienced than all the guys in front of him. He had a couple of, guys he couldn't put away that were tough and resilient, but it was a nice showcase for Joe Riggs anyway, like his character makes him more marketable. But this Bronzoulis was tough, and he's been, training since the show, and we might see an upset. I'd say smart money goes for Joe Riggs to get this title that will mean something, I guess. It will mean Joe Riggs fights in Bellator some more. And if the other guy, if Bronzoulis loses, I almost called him the other guy. I tried to correct myself because that was disrespectful. But he lost to Joe Riggs. That's fine to lose against a guy who has like 400 MMA fights. So good for them. Joe Riggs will probably pull off that and get a nice, what I will assume will be a glass plaque that looks almost exactly like the Ultimate Fighter plaque, as everything about that show looked almost exactly like the Ultimate Fighter. But it's going to be a great night. It's going to be free. That's the best of all, and I'm going to enjoy watching it. What I want to do right now, guys, I want to throw the commercial, and then we're going to come back. I know we're going to be taking a week off next week, so I definitely want to move forward, and I want to talk about the UFC cards that we have coming in the next week. We got the Fight Night, Fight for the Troops 3, and we've got the Henderson Belfort card that's going to be coming up as well. So we'll go to commercial right now. We'll be back in a minute and 32 seconds.
This is Real Combat Media Radio. Check us out at realcombatmedia.com. While you're there, check out the Feed the Poor link on the bottom of every article, and you can send a donation if you're interested. That is, once again, on the bottom of every article as well as on the top of the website. If you are an MMA, boxing, or fitness business and interested in sponsoring our website or radio podcast, send us an email. Advertising at realcombatmedia.com. Once again, that is advertising at realcombatmedia.com. Make sure to check out the Real Combat Media MMA and boxing store at the top of the menu at realcombatmedia.com. We carry a collection of products. We have the Cardio Mask, which is excellent for all fighters, endurance athletes, and serious fitness enthusiasts. Once you are in the Real Combat Media store, click on the banner on that page. We also carry Alpha Brain. Alpha Brain is a great and natural product which activates your brain's neurotransmitters and helps you think more clearly, which improves brain function. You can also purchase the world's healthiest plant protein, which comes from hemp. There are many other products online on the online store, and click on the On It banner at the Real Combat Media store, and you can purchase Alpha Brain and other health products. Use the discount code Real Combat Media, and you will receive 10% off at the checkout store on the On It. That is ONNIT on the banner at Real Combat Media store. Buckle up. Here we go. Let's get this show started.
All right, we are back. Real Combat Media MMA Radio. I am your host, Isaac Lamford. I am being joined this evening by comedian DJ Dangler. I've got MMA recreational practitioner and enthusiast Mike Wurst from Memphis, Tennessee, and my younger brother and amateur competitor, Thor Lamford. We are getting ready to jump forward. We're going to talk about UFC Fight for the Troops 3. You can join in by hitting us at Real Combat Media on Twitter, Real Combat Media on Facebook, and if you want, you could even call in 347-324-5998. All right, guys, let's jump in here. Let's take a look at UFC Fight Night 31, UFC Fight Night for the Troops 3. Way too long of a title, let me just say before anything else. That's insane. It's happening November 6th at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. We've got main event Tim Kennedy against Rafael Natal, which I will point out was going to be Lyoto Machida fighting Tim Kennedy. Machida pulled out to fill in for Michael Bisping this past weekend against Mark Munoz. Good for, Machida that he did so, paid off well for him. We also have Liz Carmouche against Alexis Davis, Hani Marquez against Yoel Romero, Rustam Khabilov against Jorge Masvidal, Michael Chiesa against Colton Smith, Bobby Green, James Krause, Francisco Rivera, George Roop, and Dennis Bermudez, Steven Seiler, and Amanda Nunes against Germaine de Rondame. I may be mispronouncing Germaine's name, and I apologize for that. Hondame, not positive. I know her first name is Germaine. That's all that really is important. Let's talk first. Let's talk the main event here. We've got Tim Kennedy, the military man, is fighting Rafael Natal. Rafael is on a roll. Tim Kennedy, not so much of a roll. but still an appropriate main event fighter if you're going to do a fight for the troops. He's coming off 2 wins. I guess I shouldn't. I say he's not on so much of a roll. The guy's lost 1 fight in his last 5, so allow me to correct myself. And he did just pick up a pretty convincing decision over Roger Gracie. It made Gracie look fairly inexperienced in the MMA cage. And on the other side, you have Rafael Natal looking almost identical. He has 1 loss in his past 6 fights. And he's coming off of a pretty solid unanimous decision over Tor Trung at the Teixeira Bader in Brazil a little while back. This is a better fight for Tim Kennedy here. I think that he's the favorite over Rafael by far. He's a grinder. Tim Kennedy's tough as nails, and I think he'll probably be able to pull this one off. Maybe even tire Rafael out and get a guillotine maybe later into the fight. Better way to go than having to meet Lyoto Machida in his promotional debut, as we saw what happened to Mark Munoz. Let's say, Thor, I'm going to go to you first to tell me your thoughts on Tim Kennedy, Rafael Natal.
That's a 5-round fight, right, since it's the main event?
I'm actually not sure on that. I'll try to look it up, but I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to find that information a lot of times. If I didn't hear it, I have a hard time finding it in print. If it is a 5-round fight, were you going to allude that really favors Tim Kennedy?
Yes. But honestly, even if it's a 3-round fight, I feel like 3 rounds might even be worse just because Tim Kennedy might really push the pace, and that might be where he catches a guillotine or something like that, or some, a rear naked, some sort of choke.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was Tim Kennedy's last fight. Do you remember?
Tim Kennedy's fight with Roger Gracie was his last fight.
Okay, yeah, that beat down. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he put it on him pretty good. Mike, what do you think about this main event?
I'll just keep it plain and simple. Tim Kennedy wins.
Yeah, DJ?
I don't like this main event, and I don't like this card, and I don't like the fight for the troops. Yeah, Kennedy's going to win this one because he's supposed to. Like, I don't like the fight for the troops. I didn't like the first or the second or this one. I feel like they throw a lot of fighters away on this, and I think they get guys that are bad matches and guys that take stupid risks and are going to break their heads and just throw meat at a bunch of red meat. That's what this is going to be. This is going to take all of the art out of mixed martial arts, and when the idiots like McCain and the other uninformed people talk about MMA being human cockfighting, the fight for the troops is a good goddamn example of that. and I think this card will be the same thing, and I will not watch this card.
Wow, very strong feelings from you, DJ. I do see. I definitely feel some of your sentiment on that. I think there are a couple fights tucked away in here that will be some good competitions, but I do understand what you're saying. But what I think is weird is that they don't have Brian Stann anymore, so Tim Kennedy is like your next best thing for your like G.I. Joe fighter. And they were going to have him fight Lyoto Machida. They were going to have a foreigner come in and kick the shit out of Tim Kennedy in front of all the military. Does that sound weird to anybody else?
That at all. Yeah, I didn't understand that at all. But I think it also, though, it played into their big, dramatic, easy to follow and drink 17 beers to fight plan, which was going to be watch these guys get punched in the head real hard, which is what I think would have happened to Tim Kennedy if Machida had fought.
Yeah, I think so as well. Alexis Davis, Liz Carmouche, pretty much like every fight that we see in the UFC's female bantamweight division turns out to be a pretty damn good scrap because they are the best women of the division. This is another one. What's that?
No, I was going to say I am excited to see what happens with Alexis Davis. I think she is she's a fun fighter to watch, but I'll just have to read about it.
I think Liz Carmouche is gonna really push Alexis Davis in this fight. I see Liz Carmouche coming out on the right side of this. she impressed in her fight with Ronda Rousey, and she looked great in her fight against Andrade. I think that we're going to see her working her way back up to a title shot pretty soon. And if not a title shot, we're definitely going to see her fighting the Kat Zingano, the Miesha Tate. She's going to be right back up there in that realm. I don't know if it'll be a finish, though. I think she's got I think she's stronger. She'll push. She's a Marine lady, too, fighting in front of the troops. We got to have somebody to put the American flag around their shoulders and, parade them around after the fight. Mike, what do you think about this one here?
I agree with you. I think Liz Carmouche is going to push Alexis Davis. I think she gets a win.
Thor?
Yeah, I would say Liz Carmouche, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see her get a finish. I think she'll put so much pressure that possibly the third round, she might get her to the ground and she's on top, and just hit her so many times that the referee steps in, or she gives up a choke or something. But yeah, I'd say Carmouche.
Yeah, and we obviously know DJ's strong feelings on the card here. And I think, honestly, with this card, I'm going to throw out just, there are some fights that are – there's a lot of fights on this card and a lot of names, kind of buried down, like Lawrence Larkin's fighting Chris Camozzi, but a lot of these, like DJ's saying, though, he does have a point in some of these matchups. They have a lot of these the zombie fighters, Colton Smiths, and the Chris Camozzis and the Dennis Bermunezes that are, and the Jorge Masvidal guys that are just going to throw down. And normally, all we look at these and we say, oh yeah, awesome, these are going to be good scraps, whatever. But DJ's got a bit of a point here. There is going to be a lot of blood in the cage, most likely on this card, and it might be a rough one to watch. I would say of any of the fights, I really want to see James Krause fight again, and he's fighting Bobby Green. That's going to be a really good one to watch. And any time that Jorge Masvidal is fighting, I am a big fan, and I want to see how it plays out. I'm a huge fan of Masvidal. He's already riding a 3-fight winning streak here, and we'll probably see a decent fight between Chesnia and Colton Smith. So I'm gonna hand the entire card to you guys and hear what you have to say. The Germaine de Randamie is also against Nunez. That would be good for the 135-pound division. So, Thor, just this card overall, what is jumping out to you?
Is that Nunez as in Diego?
No. Germaine de Randamie and Amanda Nunez.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, to me, that's why I think Lyoto and Anderson are my favorite fighters, is because they're not like a zombie type, fighter that, is a really ham and potato fighter. That's how I'll put it.
Yeah.
That's kind of how the card is. But I don't know. What's his name? Chris Carmouche, is that his name?
Yeah. Superman.
Yeah, I would be interested to see that fight, because I think that guy's Muay Thai is really good. He doesn't move his head a lot, but, you don't see a guy fight for a while, and, I'm sure he's seeing holes, if he's a smart guy, he'll see holes in his game and, try to step it up. I'm not really sure who his last fight was. I think it was a loss. I can't remember who he fought last, but
if you remember, he stepped in to fight Jacare.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, so, he's a game dude, obviously. But, yeah, I'm pulling for him, but, it'll be an entertaining night, but not, to me, it's just the type of card that I don't, there's not going to be, like, a significant title picture type deal besides maybe Liz Carmouche's fight.
Sure. Yeah, I will say, Camozzi's opponent, Lawrence Larkin, he has that loss in his last fight against Francis Carmo, which I actually thought he won that fight. If I went back and watched it, I might have a different opinion, but that coming away with it, his only knocks were a loss to Muhammad Lawal at 205, which was ruled a no contest afterwards, and then because of the I don't remember if it was testosterone or steroids for King Mo. But the only knocks on him there, he has wins over Robbie Lawler and some other, Mike Cook and some other decent opponents. I'm a big fan of Lawrence Larkin, so I'm rooting for him in the Camozzi fight. But You're right. Not a lot of the two female fights on here have the most implications if you're looking at title hunt type of stuff. Mike, what do you think about the rest of this card?
Yeah, I kind of agree with DJ. It's not the card that I'm going to rush home from work and it's fight night, But I want to see the Colton Smith-Michael Chiesa fight because I watched Michael Chiesa through the Ultimate Fighter, and when he won the Ultimate Fighter, I've watched a couple of his fights after that. I just like the way he fights. He's kind of just, I think he frustrates you a little bit, and he kind of picks you apart, and then he just goes for it. So I'm kind of curious to see that fight. I like for him to win that fight, and then I'm kind of curious to see the Jermaine Durandame and Amanda Nunes fight, since because I was doing some research on I think Julia Budd, and I noticed that she's fought both of them, so I was kind of curious to get her take on both of them. But anyway, that's my take on the card.
Yeah, right on. I want to get in here as well. I want to talk about the UFC Fight Night 32, which happens just a few days later on November 9th. This one is in Brazil. It's headed up by Belfort Henderson, and I'll run down really quickly from the bottom. We got Jose Maria against Dustin Ortiz, Darren Cruikshank against Adriano Martins, Justin Salas against Thiago Tavares, which Salas is stepping in fairly late. A lot of the news sources still don't even have it replaced from last week's guest, Quinn Mulhern, from his injury. So Salas stepping in here. Omara Akhmedov against Thiago Porpetuo, Johnny Eduardo against Lucas Martins, Godolfo Pepe against Sam Cecilia, Hani Jason against Jeremy Stevens, Ryan LaFleur against Santiago Ponzinibbio, Brandon Thatch, Paulo Thiago, Rafael Cavalcante against Igor Petrajek, Cesar Ferreira against Daniel Serafian, and the main event, Vitor Belfort, Dan Henderson. Definitely, we got to talk about the main event. Vitor Dan Henderson, a rematch from, I'm going to have to look at what year it was. I know it was Pride in Las Vegas. Dan Henderson fought Vitor Belfort, and Dan Henderson at that time, he really made Vitor look stupid in the fight. At least my remembering of this fight was Vitor looking tired, being pinned on his back, and losing a unanimous decision. Let me see. I do have the year here. It would have been. What's that?
Didn't he also get flagged for testosterone or something after that? Didn't he?
Yeah, it was October 21st.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah,
was. We talked about the resurgence of Vitor. I thought Vitor was done after that last fight. Like after that fight with Dan Henderson, I was like, no, he's done. He should quit. And God damn it if I wasn't wrong.
Yeah. He basically stepped down his competition for a little bit. He took a couple of fights in Cage Rage, and then he moved over Affliction. And I can't remember if the Terry Martin fight, if that was his debut at 185, if he went to 185 just when he entered into Affliction or not.
Yeah, that was his middleweight debut.
Definite resurgence of his career. This is a weird fight for Vitor Belfort. Vitor Belfort should be fighting for the middleweight title. Instead, he took fights against. He's fought everybody. Everybody that they can. And I know, there's all kinds of people saying stuff about how, he only fights in Brazil because of testosterone replacement. His testosterone levels can be higher. A lot of the stuff being said. But his only losses in the past 2 years are to champions. He lost to Anderson Silva fairly quickly. He picked up 2 wins, and it's been weird because he picked up the 1 win against Akiyama at middleweight, and then the Anthony Johnson fiasco, which he barely made 205, if he even made 205 for the fight, and Belfort got the win there. Then he fights John Jones at 205 and loses. Goes back to middleweight. Michael Bisping, Luke Rockhold, great knockout finishes, and then he's going back to 205 to fight Dan Henderson, and it just seems like it's slowing down what he should be doing at the middleweight division. I won't go into this fight yet. I'll let everybody else go first. Before DJ, what do you think about the Vitor Dan Henderson rematch?
I've been making this complaint now for 9 years. It depends on which Belfort shows up. I mean, sometimes he is arguably the toughest man on the planet, and sometimes he isn't. That being said, he's still, even though he's been fighting forever, I believe he's a younger man than Henderson, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I mean, like he's one of those guys. He was fighting when he was like 7 years old. So I think Belfort has what it takes to beat Henderson. Like, I hate to bet against a guy that has that crazy punch power, but he's not going to land that punch against Vitor. I don't think he's going to. Vitor is too quick for that punch to land. And you take that away, I don't see Henderson beating anybody without knocking them out anymore, and I don't think he's going to land that punch on Vitor.
That's a fair assessment. Mike, what do you say?
Yeah, I agree with DJ. I think, in my opinion, I think two fighters headed two different directions. I think Henderson's he's declined a little bit, and I think Vitor's maybe kind of hit that second stride, kind of like DJ said. He thought he was done after that Dan Henderson fight. And then, like he said, he was wrong, and I think he's kind of hitting that second stride now. So I think, Michael Bisping and Luke Rockhold aren't anything to slouch at, and, those were some pretty good fights. So I think Belfort's going to take him out in the second or third round.
Sure. Thor, what do you think? I know you're a Vitor man.
Yeah, I love Dan Henderson too, but how old is Dan? 42 at this point?
And he might be 42
43.
by the fight, yeah.
He's 42.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's pretty old. But, I mean, Dan has proven he can hang with, really tough dudes and everything. But I've always said that Vitor at 185, I thought he would be the guy that might clip Anderson Silva and dethrone Anderson. Obviously Anderson took him out. But, I just have to think that Vitor is like the quickness of Vitor. I mean, he's got to be at least twice as fast as Dan. I mean, the only way I could see, I don't think Dan can take him down. And if it's a 5-round fight, if it's a main event, I don't know. I would be surprised to see Dan Henderson get finished, quite honestly. I mean, he's been as close to finished as you could possibly be in a couple of fights, and he's never been finished. So, I don't know, maybe Vitor catches a rear naked choke after hurting him or something, but I just think Vitor is going to connect with some bombs and, rock Dan and catch Dan in a bad spot. He's too fast, and I think Dan has some trouble with southpaws. Anderson, kind of showed that a little bit.
Sure. I can only think of one time ever seeing Dan Henderson hurt by a punch, and that was against Anderson Silva. I think if anyone can hurt him, it's definitely Vitor Belfort. He's got the speed and the power, and he's been, the kick game that he's brought in. Vitor definitely can do it. I think that you can't overlook the fact that Vitor is a jiu-jitsu guy, and that Dan Henderson has been vulnerable to submissions throughout his career, especially if he does get rocked and it hits the ground, or if he gets tired because he does throw everything he has into it. I'm still going Dan Henderson, and the reason I'm just going off of history, I'm comparing the two, and I'm thinking Vitor has notoriously broken in fights if he wasn't leading. He also was originally exposed by Randy Couture and was beaten by Randy Couture more than once, because once his initial blowout was over, Randy smothered him and put a beating on him, and I think that Dan is better than Randy Couture ever was, and I think Dan can really hurt him. I don't know that Vitor Belfort could handle what Dan Henderson put on Shogun or Jake Shields. I think Vitor would probably break mentally under that pressure. Dan Henderson's not going to break. He may get exhausted, and that will make him more vulnerable. I just think by the time that Dan Henderson is that exhausted, Vitor's already resigned from the fight. And maybe he'll prove me wrong. As far as the sport itself goes, it's better if Vitor Belfort wins, because Dan Henderson's time is limited, and Vitor should be fighting for a middleweight title right now. All that being said, Dan Henderson has been looking more his age his last couple of fights. He's had a hard time keeping up with guys like Rashad Evans, who, he's just at a speed deficit. He'll definitely be at a speed deficit against Vitor. A lot of things go in Vitor's favor here. I can definitely understand that pick. but I could see a Dan Henderson decision. I could also see a Dan Henderson, like, third-round TKO, but I wouldn't be shocked to see Vitor knock him out or submit him. So it's going to be interesting to see. I was excited the last time they fought and kind of let down, so I don't want to put too much on this, but if I'm betting, my money's going on Dan Henderson. We've got 5 more minutes of the live show here, and we can continue past that point for anybody who listens afterwards, but I do want to, before we get to there, just for the people that are listening live, I want to thank you for listening, first of all, and I want to say definitely check us out, the Twitter, Real Combat Media, Facebook, Real Combat Media, and realcombatmedia.com, of course. Let all of you guys get your Twitters thrown out there before we talk about the rest of this card. So, Mike, go ahead and put yours out.
At SoccerGuy39.
All right. Thor?
It's just at Thorilla.
Thorilla. DJ? You with us there, DJ? I think we may have lost DJ. It's okay. We'll get him back. And I know you can find him. DJ Dangler. Very easy. He's DJ Dangler. He's performing with Afro Man on Halloween in Mooresville outside of Indianapolis. You can find him there. So to all of you that are listening live, I thank you. My Twitter is at Isaac Lampert, ISAACLANDFERT. Thanks to all of you. Now, guys, I'm going to just kind of pitch it out to you and ask you your thoughts on the rest of the card. I'm going to put a couple of things out there. I think the fights to watch here, Brandon Thatch looked amazing in his UFC debut. I really put him against Paulo Thiago on enemy territory. That's going to be interesting to see how he does. Brandon Thatch, if he looks as good as he has against every other opponent against Paulo Thiago, this guy is going to be a real force. Need to see his grappling. Maybe Paulo Thiago will test him there, and we'll get to see a little something out of him. That's a good fight to watch. I think Hani Jason, Jeremy Stevens is going to be a fun fight. I think that's going to be a good scrap. I like the Rafael Cavalcante Igor Petraeus fight just because it's going to let us see Cavalcante against somebody in the UFC who's like, a middle of the road fighter, kind of up and down, and give me more of an idea of where he's going to fit into this. So I'm just going to throw out on the entire card, once again, just your thoughts. Thor, what do you think about this card?
I'm going to go ahead and pick Hani Jason in that fight. I think that's a great fight, but I think he's smarter, and he'll stay away from that power.
Yeah. I think that's probably fair to say. Mike, what do you think?
I honestly don't know much. I don't know much about those fighters, and I didn't get a whole lot of time to look over the card other than I'll just throw it out there. I agree with you. I think Brandon Thatch, he looks really good right now, and I think he's going to sneak out with a win over Paulo Thiago.
Yeah, it will be neat to see. It really seems like, for whatever reason, like, they're kind of trying to shed Paulo Thiago. Like, they had him. He was booked to fight. I'm at a loss for his name. Kelvin Gastelum here in Indianapolis, and he pulled out. But I was surprised they're throwing an Ultimate Fighter at Paulo Thiago. I know he's on a bit of a slide in his career, but it seems surprising to me. And now another, like, a guy with one fight in the UFC. It seems like a loss, and we might see the last of Paulo Thiago. So good luck to Brandon Thatch in that one. Like, super nice guy. When he was here in Indianapolis, I got to see that guy. After his fight, he was out immediately in the crowd, signing autographs, carrying on, being a righteous dude. You guys, unless you have any other thoughts, I think we can wrap this up. DJ did text me his call was dropped, but he just says good night and thank you and all of that. So, any last thoughts from either one of you guys, Mike?
I'm ready for UFC 167, man. I think that's going to be just as awesome a card, I think, as 166. So I'm ready to see 167.
Yeah, and it is. We have all these fights laid in front of us, but I agree with you. Like, when these start dangling out in front of you, like, it's hard not to just get anxious to get past. Thor, you have anything you want to say before we leave?
I think, talking about Paulo Thiago, I think his slide, honestly, has been his cardio in his last few fights. It just seemed like he got too tired too quickly. You know, and if you see
Yeah.
the way the dude throws punches, I mean, yeah, he knocked Koscheck out a few years ago, but look at how he threw those punches. That was 100% power, and I just think that, you know, everyone knows to look out for his Darce chokes, that's for sure. But, you know, he could always pull out a win if it's early, but, you know, I'm going to go ahead and go with Thatch on that one, too.
Yeah, and what will be interesting here is if we can get Thatch out of the first round and we can see what happens. Like, this is just going to be a really good test for him, and we'll really get a good idea about Brandon Thatch after this fight, I think. We're still working on him. You know, we've been talking to him about being on the show, and schedules haven't really worked out, so definitely like to talk to him, you know, after this fight. I'm sure that's exactly what happened. He jumped into another training camp and been occupied. So, yeah, good couple of weeks of fights here. We'll be back in a few weeks to recap and talk about. We'll get here before 167 and get things out. Hopefully we can reschedule an interview with Leslie Smith as well and talk to her about her title fight coming up in December. But thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Mike, Thor, thank you for calling in and joining the conversation. And I will talk to everybody later. Good fights. Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.